years ago, maybe. I ran into Sam. He was working at Ventures and was one of kind of the key decision makers there in terms of students that are ready for the next round of funding. I would imagine he would see probably 300 to 400 business pitches a year, maybe more than that, higher, 500. So he would see a lot of ideas all around the country. It wasn't just here locally. And then out of that, they would pick up maybe 15 or 20 that would be part of the fund. I love their metrics on how they selected the teams. I love their exposure on what makes things kind of work. He's kind of been playing in that arena. That's when I met him. But then I find out that he's had quite an interesting life of entrepreneurship, of working in big companies, of intrapreneurship, of how do you work in Walmart and create an $80 billion new concept. I mean, it just blows me away. So we're really fortunate to have Sam Bernards here to speak to us today. Should have a lot of great stories, a lot of good information. He's going to focus in on innovation because I think that's really a key aspect of the development of the entrepreneurship era coming up is the innovation side of it. So Sam, he's from Brigham City, that's where he was born, is that right? And he graduated from BYU, and we're grateful to have Sam here. So turn it over to Sam.
Testing. Can you all hear me? In the back row, can you hear me from this microphone? Good? Awesome. Great, thank you. So thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be invited with you, or to speak with you today. If you were to just take one thing away from my talk, it's that life is pain. It's a quote from one of my favorite movies, Man in Black, if you're familiar with The Princess Bride. There is a lot to be said about entrepreneurs that will come in and say, look at me, my life has been so wonderful, look what I've accomplished. And what I've found personally is that you don't learn nearly as much about what you really need to know from your successes as you do from your failures. There's just something about the agony, the angst, the humiliation sometimes that you experience as an entrepreneur, whether or not it's an entrepreneur in a small startup your own, or as an investor entrepreneur, or in a large corporation. And for me, that's been an important realization because pain always happens. Life is pain. We're always in a state of discomfort, rarely got it all made, everything's ironed out. And if you just realize that and embrace it and think to yourself, what is there to learn from this? Life can be rich. And what you can take away from it is just amazing. And so I have here on the board my history. What's not on here is the level of pain that I've experienced from each one. There is kind of an interesting effect where the smaller of a company down here on the bottom side and the larger a company on the top side seems to have the more magnitude of pain/lessons learned. And what I mean by that is, a small early stage startup, everything is on your shoulders. You don't know who to turn to usually. You're struggling to get a team around you, struggling to get funding, struggling to make something that people want. You have no clue how to sell something. If something works, usually you're lucky, and it's really hard to be able to replicate that in the future. And you've got a lot of lessons that you learn from that as a consequence. On the top end, life inside Wyeth, inside Walmart, that was hell on earth for me because it's bureaucratic, it's political in nature. You sit in a dingy cubicle all day long, not seeing the sun, at least for Walmart. Wyeth was a little bit different. And the experience that you have can actually be really narrow if you let it, or really powerful if you embrace it. And what I'd like to do is trace for you some of the lessons that I've learned with a focus on innovation from two of these companies. One is Walmart, and the other one is the company that I just recently left in a very painful way about 2 weeks ago. It's called Purple. By a show of hands, who's heard of Purple in here? Wow, I'm impressed. So let me begin. Walmart and Purple. So innovation at Walmart had a threshold, and that threshold was, get this, $2 billion. If your idea did not move the needle to the extent of $2 billion or more, it was garbage. And if it did happen to move the needle, you had a lot of naysayers. I don't believe you, prove it. A lot of politics, you would move people's cheese if you had an idea that would cause them to deviate from their goals and objectives, from the way that they do their business. And so it was very much an uphill battle. There is something that I learned kind of the hard way inside a large organization, which is large organizations are like gearboxes. If you think about a gearbox where every gear is perfectly placed, they've got the teeth that mesh, they know exactly how it's calibrated, that is a large company. And large companies are large because they figured out how their gearbox works, and they're able to just chug it in and day out. And that just makes their money. Now, to deviate from that, to be an anomaly in the system, that's hard. The entire organization has momentum, and it does not permit a person to come in and be different, to be an innovator. And so it's really difficult to do it. So difficult, in fact, that this is actually how most innovation is originally viewed, which is a really difficult way to view innovation. This is the stock price of Walmart. And when I came into Walmart in 2004, which is about here, as you can see, they were in a kind of a plateau. And that was richly ironic because at that point in time, Walmart was layering on incremental revenue and growth that was bigger than the entire Target Corporation combined at that time. And so the question was, why? If we are growing so phenomenally, why isn't the stock price moving? And so that angst, that piece of pain right there was the genesis of quote-unquote innovation, which is not a really good reason to begin innovation. And so as I was brought into this problem, this is what they described to me. This is where the Supercenter was launched in 1988. It took 3 years to even get that to a profitable format. And it was a decade before the Wall Street analysts actually believed that the Supercenter was a growth vehicle. They then incorporated that into their growth models, and as a consequence, their future expectations of growth lifted. And as a consequence of that, so did the stock price. And that's where the stock price climb really began. But at a certain point, the analysts figured out the trade areas of each supercenter, the amount of foot traffic, of vehicular traffic that every supercenter needed. And guess what happened to the stock price at that point? Capped. Now, all of the future expectations of growth were rolled backwards in time to that point where it started leveling out. And at that point, everything began based, the stock price began based on performance instead of growth, which is what you see there. And that is when I came in to this picture and was given this challenge. And the way to overcome this was completely beyond me. It was completely beyond almost everybody that I spoke to. And so I started hitting my head against the brick wall. Mammoth organization where everything's been done. And first and foremost, when you don't have personal credibility with the executives that need to believe your pitch for, some innovative project. And so it all began by founding kind of a baseline understanding of the industry. It took over a year to do that first block, which is a comprehensive retail landscape analysis. That meant that we knew every single retailer in the United States, what made them tick, what shopping occasions they owned, etc. And then we pitched what we thought was a viable innovation about how to compete in that landscape and win and grow the company to the executives. And every single idea that I thought was cool, the executives just poo-pooed. It was horrible. I felt so dumb. Because they would say, yeah, we've been there, done that. We did that in '84. We did that in, they'd pick a year. And these are the individuals that really grew Walmart from a nothing to, at that point, about $350 billion organization. And it was so difficult to figure out anything that not only would move the needle, but hadn't been done before. And so at a certain point, we had this aha moment, which was that we had actually been looking at the geographical map of the United States the wrong way. When we took a look at the map and plotted with black dots every single supercenter that existed, what we saw was a United States full of black dots. And the only white space that was available to go into was like North Dakota, deserts of Nevada, etc. And that actually led to the aha moment when we realized that we were at a complete dead end and nobody was going to give us any help, and there was no receptivity to our good ideas. The aha moment was this: we were looking at geographical dots without population. And if we just calibrated the map a little bit differently and looked at stores per capita, all of a sudden white space just opened up. $80 billion of white space, in fact. And that $80 billion was just in the 15 biggest metro areas of the United States. There was a problem. The problem was that you can't go into San Francisco with a 20-acre supercenter. The land just does not exist. The average supercenter cost was in the teens per square foot. If you go into any metro area like Philadelphia, it's $40 a square foot. If you go into Long Island in New York, it's about $100. If you go into Manhattan, it's about $1,000 per square foot. So how do you have a business model that can actually compete with increased rent prices? So we had to recalibrate everything that we were thinking about. And at the end, we ended up having this business case that was much more than $2 billion. It was $80 billion. So it checked that box. And then we created a plan of action, and the last one that is called Burning Platform. This is Walmart lingo for why do we even care? And here was the Burning Platform. Because we actually knew how many more supercenters would be built, and because there was nothing else, there was actually an end to the runway for Walmart. And so if we did not develop some sort of new growth format for Walmart, they would come to the end of growth, and it was within a few years. It was really interesting. So that Burning Platform we thought was the deal killer. And we thought we had everything, but no, we just had another brick wall. And I slammed my head against this brick wall again and again and again. And it was so painful. And then somebody from our team had this, what I think was a genius idea. This may sound weird, but just bear with me here. We went inside Walmart. There's a section in the grocery section with non-perishable foods. In Walmart lingo, it's called dry grocery. We bought one of every single item. And then we went to this other small format retailers like Dollar General, Aldi, Save-A-Lot, and some others. And we bought the corresponding items. We put them all into a little room side by side, and we used sticky notes. And to this day, I will always have a soft spot in sticky notes because it was actually sticky notes that communicated what we needed to this guy. This is Lee Scott. He's the former CEO of Walmart. And when we turned him into that little room, he saw which of those competitors had the price advantage. Yellow for Dollar General, blue for Walmart, red for Aldi, etc. And guess what he did not see? He did not see an ocean of blue. Walmart was clearly losing on all, not all, but the majority of the items from these small format competitors. That they had figured out how to actually make a small format store that could go into the urban markets. They'd figured out how to make it work. By bringing him in, and as he exited, he had his arm around me and he was shaking his head and he said, "This is heartbreaking." And guess what happened? One day later, the executive vice president of merchandising came in with his SVP team, and they did the tour. And then after that, every single merchant was required to not only come in and do a little tour of what we were about to show them, but to write personal essays to the executive vice president about how they were going to regain price leadership with their items. And that was the beginning of acceptance for the innovation. But it wasn't all that we had to do. This was the next step. We actually rented out a secret warehouse inside Bentonville, Arkansas, and we built this store inside it. We had every single shelf, every bit of layout, and then once we had it all up and ready to walk through, we personally toured, and this may seem ludicrous, and it kind of was. We toured 120 because I learned a very important and, for me, life-changing lesson about how to innovate within a corporation, which is this: people support that which they help create. And everybody had to have a voice in this. And when you deal in an organization that is what's called cross-functional, where you have multiple functions and everybody kind of collaborates cross-functionally, you've got to give everybody a voice, or else they don't have buy-in and you don't have the support that you need. And so what we did is, not only did we tour everybody, but we hopped on every single recommendation that they gave to us, and then we invited them back to see what the changes were. Now, the results of that, we were actually able to land the #1 priority on the CEO's top 10 list. And we were able to get millions of dollars, enough to buy or to build about 30 of these stores into 3 different geographies: North Carolina, Chicago, and Northwest Arkansas. And they just crushed it. When we launched them, the revenue was 400% what we expected. We got them profitable in about a third of the time that we thought it was going to take. It was considered, the Walmart Express in particular, was considered to be the most successful format in the history of Walmart's launch of formats. And we had 10,000 planned. But all was not well. So here's what happened. And there's my painful experience. The success of this was so phenomenal that it actually made a lot of people politically unhappy inside the organization. My boss, the VP, who was my political blocker so that me and the team could just execute, he ended up leaving the company on waves of glory, and his replacement, who was a man-hater, she did not like people from the religion that I choose to follow. She hated my older boss, and therefore hated me by association. Told me the first time that I met her, she said, "Sam, you are guilty by association to," she named my former boss, "I want you off of my team." And this was right at the height of our success. And what I learned is that there is credence. If you're familiar with the Far Eastern cultures that have more of a social orientation instead of our Western culture that has more of an individual orientation, there's this saying, and those of you that know it, you're going to know that I'm going to screw this up, but it's essentially something like this: the nail that sticks up gets hammered down. And so this is one of the things that was a painful lesson to me about life in a big company. If you make a success, if your nail head sticks up, you will get hammered down. And so I got hammered down, and it became so uncomfortable, I ended up leaving Walmart. But the lessons that I learned there, the pain that I experienced, were actually very consequential for Purple. And one of the reasons why is because of the magnitude of what Walmart was able to do. You know, one of the traps that, unfortunately, many of the entrepreneurs of our geographical region here in Utah fall into is not having their sights set high enough. In fact, if you take a look at where most entrepreneurs that make a good success settle at, when they cash out, they have a liquidity moment, they sell to somebody else, or even when they give up, it is so remarkably low, it's almost painful. And so when I say it was good to have my sights calibrated high at Walmart, here's what I mean. My first project at Walmart was to drive $2 billion to the bottom line. And that was such a high and difficult number to comprehend. It gave me a new reality of what even was possible. And so that reality, a little bit of the knowledge about how to structure large deals actually came into play quite strongly with Purple. Oh, before I go there, I forgot about this part. So this is where we launched our innovations. There was actually three things that my team accomplished. The first one was we brought online grocery to the United States. Walmart moves ridiculously slow. In the news, like 2 weeks ago, they finally announced that online grocery is now going to be within the reach of 80% of the population of the United States. And this is nearly a decade later. Walmart Express. And the last one is actually the one that is had the biggest impact, ironically. NM stands for the neighborhood market. The the business model of the neighborhood market had an allowance that was calibrated wrong. One of the people on my team figured out that the Excel model was actually had the bad formula, and so they fixed it, and all of a sudden what looked to be a very unprofitable format was now very profitable, and as a consequence, neighborhood markets started flooding the United States. And as a consequence of these three things, this is what happened to the stock, which is pretty cool. Now, one of the bad things about innovating in a corporation is that you don't actually personally see the upside. And that's one of the great things about entrepreneurship and innovation inside a small business that you actually own, is that hopefully you and your team get to capture that upside. So, 3 things that I learned, my 3 takeaways from Walmart. This is the first one. When you pitch to somebody, regardless of whether or not it's to an investor, to a potential team member, to your spouse if you want their support, simplify. You need to communicate so that your message could be understood by a 3rd grader. If you can get it to be that simple, you avoid complicated language, avoid terminology, acronyms, etc. Just make it simple. Talk to a human being. They are human beings just like you are. Usually you can make a good pitch of it. 2, people support that which they help create. This was critical, absolutely critical, to get the executives to support what we did in Walmart. And the last one is, you can achieve anything as long as you don't care who gets the credit. This one's a difficult one for me, but oh, so powerful. And if you help your team members who are doing the work feel appreciated, feel loved, feel respected for what they do, instead of taking the glory, you will have team members who love you. So let me move to Purple. Purple is an amazing company. My heart is still mourning for having left this company. And I'll tell you a little bit about why I left, if you like, in just a little bit. Here is the timeline. Now, one of the things that is difficult to articulate in a small slice of time is the magnitude and the magic about how Purple has innovated over the last 2 decades. And so I just want to walk you through it if I can. In 1998, the 2 co-founders, Tony and Terry Pierce, invented a way to completely eliminate a phenomenon called compression sores. Each one of you that are sitting down right now, unless those chairs are super duper comfy, which I don't think they are probably feeling a little bit of discomfort somewhere on your bum or on your arm, somewhere you're feeling uncomfortable. Now imagine that you're in a wheelchair and you have no choice but to sit down 24/7. People in a wheelchair experience what are called decubitus ulcers, also known as compression sores. And these things are nasty. And all material that is used in padding, foam, memory foam, latex, air, water, etc., springs, they all share one common characteristic, which is the more you press into it, the more it presses back on you with an equal and opposite force. So their big aha moment was that you can actually change that dynamic. That you can have material that actually crumbles. It does what they call buckles. And it disperses the pressure coming back on your body in such a way that you never achieve the threshold for discomfort, let alone the threshold for decubitus ulcers. They invented that clear back in 1998. It was phenomenal. It was licensed by bed makers that were in the medical arena. And to the founders' credit, since then there have been 0 known instances of anybody that has slept or sat on these materials that have developed compression sores. It's just amazing. And so Purple brought that into the consumer market, but there were problems. 2010, they had to buy their own factory because there wasn't a factory in the world that could even make this. In 2014, they created a machine because there wasn't a machine that could even create this. A machine that could create this material big enough for a king-size bed in such a way that they could mass produce it and go to the mass market. And so if you just take a look at that timeline and just realize the years of research and development, the millions of dollars, we tabulated it was north of $50 million that the founders ended up putting into their innovation. And their business was just kind of eking out a modest living at several millions of dollars for a long time, until everything had a foundation. The factories, the machines, the technologies, the products. The linchpin that was missing was marketing. And so in 2016, January, a small group of digital marketing experts unleashed to the world the brand now known as Purple. And that took off like a rocket ship. It was just amazing. It went from essentially $0 from mattress sales in 2015 to about $80 million in 2016, $290 million in 2017, and they're just on a rocket ship right now. You can see some of the cool things. They have over 102 patents, 30 what we call comfort technologies, 2 proprietary machine types, 18 football fields worth of manufacturing space, 700 employees now. Just imagine hiring 700 employees in a year and a half. It's just off the charts. 1 billion video views, 75% of all social media engagement, and so forth. And that ride, however, did not come without incredible emotional pain. So let me bring it back to pain and tell you what the team went through. One of these machines is about as tall as this ceiling, floor to ceiling, and about as long as this classroom is long. It's complicated. You take a look at the control panel, it looks like you're in the cockpit of an airplane. And it is so difficult to not only manufacture these machines and essentially use these machines, that we had daily breakdowns of these machines. And we'd have operators that would make one little error, and then you have an entire $1,000 mattress that's got a hole in the middle of it. And the team had to operate with a level of perfection, coupled with this level of, oh no, the machine just broke down, let's hustle and fix it, that it seemed like every day that our hair was on fire. And the problems that come with growth are just tremendous. The biggest problem in any company and the biggest asset is the team. Dealing with humans is not easy, and the problems that we bring to ourselves, relationship-wise and otherwise, are just amazing. And Purple essentially dealt with them all. So if you take a look at how Purple innovates, the way that Purple innovates is a combination of really 2 timelines. The first timeline and the real foundation of Purple is the founder's timeline. The second timeline is the box update that's now available. Thanks, Mark. And the second timeline is my own. This kind of weird blend between early stage startups, corporations, and venture capital investing. All of that mashed together comes to a simplified state that we simply call test, learn, scale. And here's what test, learn, scale means. Test means that you're not afraid to fail, that you actually do allocate money to going into the unknown state, and you don't hold people accountable for performance. You say, it is okay if you take 100% of this money that's been given to you and absolutely fall on your face. When you happen to stumble across something that actually succeeds, then you try to replicate it. And that's what the learn means. That you try to figure out how to duplicate the little bit of success, how to cut the chaff and replicate the good. The scale is what you do after you've actually internalized those key lessons. You've built a process around it that you can replicate, and now you shoot for the moon. You see how high is high, and that's what the scale part is. The second key component of Purple success is this. It's going for the impossible. So when the founders asked for specialists in molding to help them understand how to mold these materials, what they were told time and time again was, it can't be done. So they figured out how to do it themselves. When they turned to manufacturers of machines and asked for certain specifications, they were once again told it can't be done. There are these things called molds. They look like waffle irons inside a molding machine. They're cut from aluminum. They're very difficult to cut precisely and to be cut right. They turned to every single major mold manufacturer in the world and were told time and time again it can't be done. So they actually internalized the ability to do what everybody else thought was impossible. The marketing team, when they started having success, when I came into the company, they were about a $40 million annual run rate. And I wanted to 10x that. And from all respects, everything that we knew about our work, it couldn't be done. And we went for it anyways. And the team is currently on track to do the impossible, just because they don't quit. You know you have the right team when you don't quit. So here's the third component. We internalized the key competencies. And here's what I mean by that. We figured out that in order for Purple to be successful, 3 things, and only 3 things, needed to absolutely be done well. We called it dream, build, sell. Dream was about innovation. It was about the creation of new products from these comfort technologies, new machines that could build the products. Build was actually doing the manufacturing ourselves. So I don't know if you knew, but there are 2 factories for Purple right here in Utah. We created 700 manufacturing jobs just in the past 2 years, all here in the state of Utah. Now that seems to be bad decisions, right? Bad judgment. It's not, because that was our core competency, to make these proprietary materials that nobody else could do. And it was to our competitive advantage once we actually figured out how to do it right. The third, sell, was about marketing. So Purple never outsourced the key decisions required to actually sell its products. It would constantly, on the other hand, involve other vendors, other video production groups, but there was strategic intent, which was we're going to learn from this so that we can internalize what they do. And that helps Purple have a competitive advantage. The last one, and the one that actually led to my ousting, was incredibly powerful when the founders held strictly to it, which was don't negotiate. And by don't negotiate, what I mean is you don't compromise. If you are looking to do something with a partner, you don't allow them to whittle you down. You don't even whittle them down, because you just don't negotiate. You state your terms, what you want from them, what you're going to give, and if they leave it, you walk away. You have to have walk-away power. Now, the reason why I say that this led to my own demise is this. Purple became the second fastest unicorn in the history of unicorns. We became valued at over $1 billion within about a year and a half of launching the brand Purple, which is remarkable. Only Jet.com is a faster unicorn than Purple. In the course of that fundraise, we knew that the valuation was based on the fundamentals of the business and on the growth. And in the middle of the intense efforts that it took to do the road shows, pitching to about 100 different institutional investors in the public markets and so forth, we actually had a change in our CFO. Now, if you're familiar with public markets, they are very unforgiving when you change your guidance. And the nature of the reason why I had to let the former CFO go was that we just didn't have the key competencies that we needed to have accurate and timely financials, good guidance that we could take to the street, etc. We needed somebody with public company experience that had been there, done that. And in the transition of getting our new CFO on board, he realized that what we had gone to the street and the actual performance had a gap. And so we had one quarter that was not profitable. Well, the consequence of that was that the valuation dropped in half, which is amazing to me. And instead of not negotiating, which is what the founders historically did, they actually, in a move that is still amazing to me, but not good amazing, they said okay. And if you ask why, it has everything to do with their stage of life. You know, they were ready to move on from Purple, take a little bit of money off the table. That lack of negotiating had a dramatic consequence. And what that was is that the new investors that came in, that are very good investors at what they do, which is public company investing, helping the companies to stabilize, they brought a new paradigm to the company. And so if you were to take a look at the style of leadership that I brought to the table, it's kind of like a race car driver. And if you take a look at the style of leadership that these investors wanted, it's kind of like a chauffeur. And that just caused me to get kicked out, which was so painful, especially because I'm no longer with the team. And the team at Purple is just amazing. So if I take a look in retrospect and say, what are the big lessons that I learned from Purple? Let me share them with you. The team is everything. You know, when I was at Peak Ventures, the first and foremost criteria that dictated whether or not we would put an investment down in an early stage company was, what is the quality of their team? At Purple, because we were trying to do the impossible, the team was everything. The company succeeded or failed because of the team. The second lesson that I learned is that you cannot grow a company and have success like Purple had unless you are fully immersed. No half-baked products, no in halfway with one foot, out with the other, no part-timers, no half-hearters, full immersion. And if you are fully dedicated and your team is fully dedicated, you can overcome anything. And lastly, celebrate your why. Now this may seem like a non sequitur, but here's what I mean by that. Purple existed to help people, beginning from the foundation where they had people in wheelchairs that had compression sores till now the brand that helps people sleep better. And so we would celebrate the why. And in the midst of doing very difficult things, we would have these stories come in, like a woman who said, my father just passed away. He was in incredible pain. He had cancer on his tailbone. And as I visited with him in hospice and saw the pain, I drove 6 hours from the hospice to my house to get my Purple seat cushion. I drove 6 hours back, put it under him, and he had immediate relief. And he passed away relatively pain-free thanks to Purple. And so we would take those little stories. Those were the why Purple existed, and share those with the team members on every occasion that we could. And that helped us deal with the problems. And there was a never-ending series of problems with Purple. Never-ending series of pain, which ended up being a never-ending series of incredible lessons and incredible experiences. So, in summary, life is pain, but it's good pain. So thank you.
Okay, we have time for a few questions, so stand up, fire away, and stand up for the camera if you'll repeat the question.
Okay.
So first question, in growing a company, so you're in Walmart and then also Purple, other companies.
It's very difficult to facilitate a culture of innovation when you don't have control over the culture, so it was nearly impossible to do that inside Walmart. In fact, the very attempt to change the culture in Walmart, to go from business as normal to new business, was so difficult. We had political obstacles at every step of the way. Now, with regards to Purple, fortunately for me, the company was founded on innovation. And innovation just ran through the blood, it ran through the veins of not only the founders, but the founding team that created the machines and everything. And so there was already a legacy of that. And so the culture came by giving permission to fail, giving structure, giving vision, telling stories, having what you measure be aligned to the vision of the company, which was all about helping people, which you did through innovation. And all of that combined into the culture of Purple.
Sam, you hired Tanner Wheaton from UVU, which was an innovation fellow. Was there a program that went with that to help ingrain innovation in the company?
One of the things that Tanner is bringing to us is the innovation mindset structured from his past experiences. Tanner loved that guy. He was actually part of a two-man team, him and Lars Hamilton. They created Purple's new beds. And if you're familiar with Purple, we have 4 new models, or they have, painful to say, they have 4 new models that just hit the market. These 2 individuals did probably 90% of the work. And their ability to rapidly iterate, create rapid prototypes, get the beds under the butts of our testers, and so forth, that was just awesome. And as far as I know, he is still planning to, and in the process of creating an intern program. So if you have interns and want to work at Purple, Tanner's the man.
Wow, Tanner was a student of mine, loved him, he's really top notch. On that note, you talked about how team is everything, team building. There's a new book out called Rotopia, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it talks about the innovation in the technical arena in the Silicon Valley days and how the makeup of the team is actually one of the reasons why a lot of women and minorities are in the tech industry, because those early teams are made up of like-minded people, men usually. And so talk to us a little bit about the building of a diverse team, because statistics show that that's really critical to success, and what you think about that.
Okay, so let me answer your question by telling you a little bit of my history that I didn't share, which was this. At Walmart, I was actually asked to lead one of what they called a diversity and inclusion group. I may not look like it, but I've actually got heritage from the Polynesian side of the world. My great-grandfather was actually from the island of Tonga. And so I was asked to be the chairman of the Asian and Pacific Islander Resource Group. And in that capacity was deeply steeped in what Walmart considered to be diversity and inclusion. And in that capacity, I gained a healthy disrespect for what corporate America actually considers to be diversity, which is not diversity of thought, it's not diversity of experience, it's simply the protected classes, which I think is a good thing to embrace and to recognize. But if you stop there, that's where I think you're actually missing the point. And so what I did at Walmart was grossly different than what we did at Purple, which is to recognize that people had unique experiences, unique ways of thinking, that we actually needed to accept people that seem to be naysayers, and to take their consternation, their insights seriously, and actually build that into our tests. And so when we took a look at how do we construct a marketing video, for example, we had a robust, very vocal marketing team, and everybody had a different opinion. Like, let's do this, let's do that, let's do this. And so here was the magic that Purple took, which was they embraced all of those ideas and would create permutations with the opening sequences of videos based on those ideas, and they would put those into the market. So if you're familiar with like the Goldilocks video, the Sasquatch video, you guys know what I'm talking about? Those videos? The end video that everybody sees is actually one of a portfolio of permutations that came from the diversity of thought of the team. And then they would use empirical evidence tested in front of real consumers as to what was actually the best, and then they would cut everything else. And they would land on the video that actually worked.
Excellent, thank you for your answer. And not only thought, but experience is what's key, because they're bringing to the team background.
Let's see, Noel had his hand up real quick. We're about out of time, so if you can stick around for just a little bit after, you're welcome to come down and ask some questions. Noel, you can ask your question, and do you have a favorite word for a sandwich, or you have to give one word for attendance? You got a favorite color?
I do have a favorite color. My favorite color is actually white.
There you go. White is your attendance word. Noel, what's your question?
You guys said you own 75% of social media engagement for mattresses. How did you guys accomplish that with all the other mattress brands on social media?
product actually works. People are so excited about their purples, they actually invite their friends and family into the sanctity of their bedroom to try it. And that just creates a chit chat. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
It's good to be
Sharon.
here.